Like, by 5 years old, some kids have self-restraint and some don't. And they're both having mammalian impulses of, I want the marshmallow, but you can modulate that with, I'll get more marshmallows if I restrain myself. So it's the same thing about who's focused on long-term rewards versus immediate rewards. Now, the other thing is, so students who are doing their work, partly it may be for long-term rewards, but partly they may have learned to find the schoolwork rewarding. And partly it may be that they have learned to respect adults, whereas the ones that are just focused on their appearance, they're very much seeking the attention and protection of their peers rather than having expectations of positive adult interactions. So if you could imagine one kid is raised in an environment where they have very little adult interaction and they're basically raised by their siblings or just left in a room with other kids, then they're just trying to be cool with other kids and have an impact on other kids. And they don't really imagine another world because how could they? Kids don't necessarily think about their future or understand their future. They have to learn that. So a big thing that I wanted to talk to you about is mirror neurons. So kids are mirroring the other people in their lives. And hopefully there's some adults in their lives that they're mirroring. Hopefully there are some responsible adults in their lives, but it's whoever they're exposed to, that's who they're mirroring, and that's where these behaviors come from. Now, a lot of people are saying that comes from social media, which is something you can mirror. But once again, there's social media that will teach you how to do math. So you're still choosing which social media you use. So, your opinion.
This fits, everything you just said fits very well. And so but what makes me curious is how could, even though they probably won't, schools keep this in mind and operate in a different way for the students who are seeking attention and protection of their peers?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. So, the philosophy for so many decades now has been to try to please the students as if they're the customer. And if you please them, if you make them feel good, then they will take their work seriously. And I just don't think that's an effective strategy. So once again, when you see these students, and by the way, I should mention that when Larry wrote to me, he said more about the students actively disrupting the class and making it hard for other students to study. So you want to tell us a little bit about that too, because when I have a stronger response, it's based on that.
Um, well, there's a lot of students that are just working, but then there's other students who, again, as you put so succinctly, seeking attention and protection of their peers. And then they get louder, they sit on desks, and I'm wondering if the louder person has more status or what's going on there.
Well, they'll have more status among their peers, but if you act that way in the adult world and don't learn to do math or read, then you won't have any status in the adult world. So the whole challenge of the human brain is to defer immediate gratification in order to get long-term rewards. So the status in itself is not the problem. It's the problem is that they want that immediate status, an immediate reward, and can't even conceive that there would be bigger and better future rewards because no one has taught them that. And the schools are part of the problem because they are rewarding bad behavior. And parents reward bad behavior. I have done it myself. So no one wants to say no to a child. It's become like if you say no to a child, you're an abuser. So now schools can't say no to a child. So therefore, the child who misbehaves the most has tremendous status and power in the short run. And this affects the whole climate. So I should mention something fascinating I read recently. The whole idea of a school is kind of new in the sense that in the past, children were taught in smaller groups. So the kids didn't outnumber the adults so drastically. And it wasn't until after World War II when most students started to go to school. Like my mother was in the generation where you left school at 14 and you went to work to support your family. School was considered a waste of money because why should the family do without your earnings? So when every kid suddenly went to high school, the kids outnumbered the adults, and the kids could run wild, and the adults just sort of went along with it because they couldn't manage that many kids. And also, kids were working to please other kids rather than adults because that was mostly what they were surrounded by.
I think I may have mentioned that I found a 1956 annual. I
Yeah.
was subbing in a classroom where there were high school annuals, and already then um, it says the scholarly appearance is just not in style.
Who said that?
It was some, I don't know. It was in an annual, and it was like a comment that maybe the editor of the high school annual wrote or something.
Huh, interesting. And when you speak of the scholarly appearance, what makes me laugh sometimes is when you see the 1950s garb with a white shirt and a suit and a tie, in a lot of movies, like the criminal person is wearing that. So it just shows that that was like the routine outfit of the times. Today, we view it as something aspirational, but it was just the equivalent of jeans and a motorcycle jacket at a certain period. Yeah, so we're imagining your life being in the front of the class with some kids who are listening and want to learn, and others who are being disruptive and being very pleased with themselves for their ability to get attention in that way. If you can imagine, again, if you're a child with not much adult interaction, and you just grow up surrounded by kids who are like, monkeys in a zoo, little baby monkeys, they fight constantly, and you got to push back or else you'll get ripped apart. Now, I have to say that when my first child was born, it was like the beginning of the women's movement, and we were told that you should put your child in daycare, that they were better off in daycare, and your career mattered more. So I did that. I put my daughter, she was 10 months old, put her in this daycare where the law was one adult per six children. But sometimes I saw two of the adults gossiping with each other. So that means there were 12 toddlers just scrummaging with each other. Um, and then that yeah, I took my daughter out of there as soon as I could. But, imagine if a person is, spending their years of neuroplasticity just with the pushing and shoving of other kids and not much adult interaction. Now, having said that, go to the other extreme of some kids have like so much adult interaction today that they don't really know how to deal with other kids. Like they have an adult companion every minute and pleasing their every whim. And they expect to get their way. So when they're in the classroom, they expect the teacher to be just fully devoted to them because they've always had 100% adult at their disposition.
So does applying heavy makeup and curling eyelashes or huge false eyelashes that look like caterpillars, um, this brings status among the group.
So biologists have this term reproductive success, which means that natural selection built a brain that cares more about spreading your genes than anything else. And monkeys behave this way, and monkeys don't know what genes are. So that shows that it's not caused by a conscious desire to spread your genes. It's because natural selection builds a brain that rewards you with happy chemicals when you do things that spread your genes. So we can all remember being in our teen years, and anything that helps you get the attention and approval of a romantic partner, that turns on your happy chemicals, and it also raises your status in your social group. That's chicken and egg. If you raise your status in your social group, you're more able to get the attention of a romantic partner. So, in both ways, getting status and getting romantic opportunity are huge factors. Now, how do you get romantic opportunity? If you watch nature videos, it's fascinating because each species has a specific thing. Like you may have seen orangutans get these huge jowls. And to humans, it looks very ugly. But to female orangutans, they all fight over the guy with the big jowls and don't even want to look at a guy that doesn't have big jowls. So in every species, there's a very specific idea of what traits you're looking at. So how do these high school students of yours know which traits matter? I have to give some very sad information to anyone who doesn't know this. Porn has become so widely available that almost all young people have seen porn, and I mean the worst porn. And I mean, it just like finds them on the internet, and they see a lot of sort of grotesque representations of sexuality.
I hadn't even thought of that because um, there'll be a lot of high school girls that dress up like almost like drag queens. It seems like very exaggerated um, makeup and clothing and
Yeah, I didn't know this until a few months ago. And I read it there was a contest for the best high school essay, and it was one of the winners. And the girl who wrote it, it was a very clever title. It said, I watched porn when I was 10 and my mother was in the next room. And she said that she had very involved parents, but that porn was so um, popping up in all of their internet places that you couldn't avoid it and that every kid has seen it. And she said adults may think that porn is like girls going around with pink negligees, but she explained what modern porn was like, and it was not just grotesque, but often violent, and trains young people to believe that such violence is the norm, is the natural way that sex is supposed to be, which is quite frightening and very, very sad for young people.